Hey, what is up, my friends and fellow BusyBees? I hope you're all doing great. I have had, honestly, such a great week. I turned 30 on Monday, so a pretty big milestone birthday, and I've just been feeling the love so much. My amazing husband surprised me by flying my bestie since birth out from British Columbia to stay the week with us and visit and be able to come to my birthday party that he also organized with all of our friends. And I'm just so content with where life is right now, and my heart is just so full. And I think it's so important to verbalize these things when they're happening, to keep the positivity up and to be able to look back on. This time of year is usually a pretty big bummer because it's cold and dark and blech here in Canada. And my birthday is usually kind of like anticlimactic because it's early January, so people are broke from the holidays. They don't really want to do much. They're not going out partying because they're trying to be healthy for a couple weeks. And so, anyways, I'm just so thankful for how the month has been going. And we have a busy end of month as well for a couple different reasons that I'm totally looking forward to. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen one of them. I'll leave it at that, and you can go over and take a peek because you want a visual for that one. Trust me, it's MelDidItHerself on Instagram. So if your start of year hasn't been going quite as well, let me just shine some sunshine your way, and I hope that you feel those good vibes and things turn around for you, my friend. So if you've been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, you know that I came from the world of social work and had virtually no experience in business when I first started MelDidItHerself. I didn't grow up with any entrepreneurs around me, and funny enough, I had no intentions of being an entrepreneur or being self-employed when I first started my MelDidItHerself account. I literally just wanted a separate place to post about the DIY projects I was doing around the house, and I didn't want to annoy my friends and family with incessant posting on my personal page. But at some point, I blinked, and now I find myself a full-time, self-employed business owner. And honestly, I love it. But again, I had no idea what I was doing initially, so if you're currently feeling that way and feel like being in business would never be an option for you, I want you to stop those limiting beliefs right here, right now. You can do it, absolutely, but not with that attitude. So I've now had a business technically for like a little over 2 years, but I really got serious about it and looked at it like a business that I wanted to grow less than a year ago. Before that, I was treating it more like a hobby than a business, but I was still, doing my tax declarations and all of that fun stuff on top of it. So in this last year, but really the last 6 months that I've been doing this full time, I have learned a ton. And the way you learn is by trying things out, seeing if they work, and if they fail, just seeing that as an opportunity to try something new and tweak it until it works. So I highly recommend adopting that outlook if you don't currently have it in your own business. Focus on growth and adapting versus focusing on your failure and things that aren't working. Again, that's the pessimistic outlook that won't keep you working and excited and motivated long term to see this thing through. So for today's episode, I compiled 5 things that I've come to realize or lessons learned throughout my time so far in business. Maybe as time goes on and I learn more and more, I can eventually make this a series that I periodically do on the podcast. But when I sat down to plan out today's episode, there were 5 things that just immediately came to mind. So I figure that's a pretty great place to start. The first business lesson I learned was to not do things willy-nilly, which unfortunately is in my nature to instinctively do. If I decided I'm going to do something, better believe I go hard and give her, because if I have decided that it's something that's worth my time, then I don't want to wait too long and lose any momentum or motivation that I had for the thing. Well, as it turns out, in business and particularly in launching things within your business, it turns out that this may not be the best approach. While I will be sure to never lose my excitement and ability to actually execute on the ideas that I have, because I know that this is one of the biggest hurdles some people out there face, which is that paralysis by analysis and over-planning without actually starting. Moving forward, I am trying to be more intentional with planning things out. Planning things out in advance and giving myself ample time to accommodate for any last-minute, unavoidable things that could pop up and steal my time away from me seems to be the way to go. Over the last month and a half, I've been making more of an effort to do so, and ultimately, it has been keeping me more consistent, on track, and focused on the outcome that I am aiming to achieve. The biggest difference that I've found is when I sit down and plan out where I'm headed, I can then work backwards and write out what I'll need to do to get myself there, and then from that, I can break it down into quarterly, monthly, weekly, and then daily goals and outputs that are written in ink, I might add. Daring, I know. Written into my agenda so that I absolutely know what I need to get accomplished. I do think it was good for me to experiment earlier on in my self-employment days in the first few months to just let things go and work on things more willy-nilly and haphazardly, just to see how that went and if it would be successful for me. But especially during these more dreary months when my energy is lower and the days are shorter, I know that the more organized, written out approach will ultimately be what yields me more results going forward, at least for this next chapter that I'm currently on. And doing it this way too really makes me be intentional and sit down and write out where I'm going versus having it cut it in my head but not necessarily thinking about the big picture. I just kind of was knowing what I needed to get done next, but I would find myself doing multiple different things that weren't leading to the same goal. So I wasn't getting that end feeling of gratification and completion that I'm looking for. So now I'm more intentional with my time and I can see things through to completion and have a better idea of the steps that are needed to get me there. So I do think this is going to be something that has me reaching my goals a lot quicker as well. The second lesson I've learned in business is that it is critical to make time for learning and self-development. And I very intentionally use the word make time because as someone with multiple interests and never-ending ideas and a to-do list a mile long in my head, I could easily find myself spending all day, every day, either working or being off. Which is great because I'm able to do that work-life balance pretty nicely. However, that means that my brain is literally on and at max capacity or virtually turned off. Not so ideal. So one thing I did early on was set either monthly or quarterly goals for myself as it relates to learning new skills or taking in information or connecting with new people and audiences or doing other things that relate to my self-development. That way, I'm picking one period of time and going hard learning about it. Some topics or items require more or less time than others, so it might only be a couple of sessions of intentional time that I set aside, or it might be something that I spend the month or quarter researching and consuming content about and learning about. This allows me to hone in on one topic or concept and seek out multiple sources to learn about that thing. I might sign up for an online course, read a bunch of articles, watch videos, sign up for newsletters from people in that industry or discussing that topic, or seek out podcasts on the topic. Whatever it might be, and however complex or simple it seemingly is, I basically deep dive into it until things start to sound repetitive or I find that I'm getting too into the weeds on the topic and it's no longer helpful for the purpose that I initially sought it out. So for example, one thing that I did was spend a month learning about podcasting and hosting a podcast. I read articles, listened to podcasts talking about podcasting, #Inception, bought books that talked about starting a podcast, and read Reddit threads in the podcasting world. Those resources combined all helped me to launch and grow this podcast so that I wasn't going into it completely blind and I had some idea of the different elements at play and things that I should be aware of. When I noticed things getting too into the weeds in terms of technicalities with audio editing or information on sponsorship strategies, aka things that were useful but not relevant to me at the time, I just bookmarked those resources for later on when I would need them and could revisit them after having got the basics learned and down pat. It kept me in check and focused on the path towards the goal that I had, which was to launch the podcast. Highly recommend this approach if you find you're a multi-interest entrepreneur that can easily go down rabbit holes that seem relevant but ultimately aren't serving you and your current goals and might be stealing time away from you in your day. Paired with that learning and self-development is accessing resources that are a one-stop shop with multiple educational workshops and activities in one, like digital courses or workshops. These tools can help you to learn a lot in a short amount of time so that you can then step back into your business once they're done with a wide array of knowledge that you've picked up. And as an added bonus, they're usually amazing networking opportunities and somewhere that you can connect with like-minded people who are on a similar path as you. That's key because the world of entrepreneurship can get lonely if you aren't intentional with creating and fostering those relationships. Which leads me to today's sponsor, which is one that I'm very excited to announce. As an aside, I do want you to know that any sponsor that I accept on the podcast is one that I have vetted and truly believe will be a benefit to you. And I do feel like I know what you know, like, and trust, because as much as we all like to think we're unique and dealing with things that nobody else can understand, ultimately we all share very similar experiences and feelings. And so I just want you to know that any sponsor that you hear about was sought out by me to bring value to my busy bees that join me here every week. So I'm very excited to announce this week's sponsor, Haven Conference. You may have heard of it before or even attended previous years, but it's back, revamped, and better than ever. Haven is the leading conference for creators in the DIY, home, and lifestyle industries. This year's Haven will once again be hosted in Atlanta, Georgia, July 27th to 29th, 2023. And this year, Haven is excited to introduce both advanced and beginner learning tracks with keynotes from Like to Know It and the famed designer DeBito. If you're ready to join me and take your creator business to the next level, get $100 off of your ticket today by using coupon code BusyBee. For those who can attend, this is a great opportunity to not only learn a ton about the business of being a digital creator, but also a great opportunity to network with other creators in the furniture refinishing and related fields so that you can hear from people with different perspectives and approaches, create some new relationships, and connect with brands that you love and hear directly from them. And don't forget, this is something that is a work expense, so invest in yourself and your business, and grab your ticket today using code BusyBee, all one word, and I'll be sure to link it in the description of this episode as well, and I'll see you there. The third lesson I've learned in business is to pay attention to the numbers and use them as a reference point to guide the decisions that I make. And I say guide because I don't want analytics and numbers to be the be-all, end-all, because I do have some other filters that I go through when making decisions like, is this something that I enjoy doing? Do I have the time to take it on? Does it make sense with where I'm headed with other projects? And if it's something that I'll be bringing to you guys, is this something that I've heard that there is a want or a need for? So I'll take all that into consideration, but especially if I haven't really heard much from my followers and clients about what they want or need in relation to that thing, I will always turn to the numbers because they sometimes speak louder. So that could look a few different ways. What items or services have been selling? What posts have been performing best? When posts perform well, what was the makeup of those posts? What time did I post? What format were they in? What length was the content? Things like this can be great to analyze to give me a clearer picture so that I can take the patterns in and assess them and decide what my next move will be. I think it's important to include this and not strictly make decisions with our own head and our gut and our heart, because then we can be guiding our decisions with our emotions. And as emotional beings, humans aren't the best at that, to say the least. The fourth lesson in business that I want to share isn't one that I had to learn the hard way, thankfully, but it's one that has proven to be effective time and time again, and that is to be kind, courteous, communicative, and to act like a human. Like a real person doing their best to run a real business. People buy from people because people relate to people and people want to support people. It really is just as easy as that. And as a business owner running a service-based business, the only thing I can do is try my best to treat every client of mine with kindness and clarity, whether that be someone I'm selling a piece to, or someone I'm working on a custom project with, or someone I'm collaborating with, or someone I'm coaching, or someone that buys one of my digital offerings. I treat them the way that I would like to be treated and do my best to offer the best experience possible. And if I were to ever make a mistake or, I don't know, take too long to reply or something because life got in the way, I wouldn't try and blame someone else or make excuses or shift the responsibility from myself. I would just apologize and try to make things right. People are human and people know that. And I wholeheartedly believe that when you approach the business relationships you engage in with trust, respect, and humility, that for the most part, that will be reciprocated back to you. And if not, well, you tried your best. The fifth and final lesson for today that I have learned in business is one that is so important. So if you're multitasking and zoning out, come back to me and listen up. It is to do things out of your comfort zone. It's hard. It sucks. None of us want to do it, but just do it. Push past any imposter syndrome, any cringiness, any intimidation or nervousness or anxiety or fear of judgment or whatever it is that holds you back and gives you an excuse to say, actually, I better not. Figure out what it is that holds you back and then say fuck it and do it anyway. I can't emphasize it enough that this is the only way that you will get more comfortable with it, learn, and grow. And it's likely the way that you will end up getting the opportunities that you really want because you never know until you ask. And guess what? The absolute worst thing is that someone could say no or ignore you and whatever, at least then you know. Though if you don't hear anything back at first, I would recommend following up once or twice before giving up completely. And you know what? The best case scenario is that thing that you really wanted, that thing that seemed out of reach and you thought, oh, that could never be me. They could say yes to that thing and you can achieve things that you used to dream about. You have to believe in yourself and that you're capable of achieving it. And then you need to push yourself past that comfort zone and past that resistance and just go for it. And I promise you that the more often that you do this, the easier that it will become. And ultimately, the more you will achieve those things that you set out to do. And as a result, the more fulfilled you'll feel personally and in your business. And something you may not know about me, I love little motivational messages. They always get me fired up, and I keep a running list of ones that are especially catchy or speak to me in the Notes app on my phone. So I end every podcast episode with one of those that I've noted down over the years in hopes that you leave our time here each week feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on whatever comes your way this week. So this week's Mel's motivational message is ready, fire, aim, not aim, ready, fire. And the reason for this is because, like I said, we can spend so much time getting caught up in the weeds of planning and trying to make things just so. There is a certain level of planning, like I mentioned in tip number 1, that I do recommend doing, but you have to be able to recognize when that point is that you can just fire and then figure out the things that you can fine tune, what worked well, what didn't, and then you can re-aim that, redirect, and figure out what it is about that thing that's really going to make it stick. But if you spend forever fine-tuning, tweaking, editing, rearranging, redesigning, and doing all of the things that ultimately, you'll notice, but will anybody else notice? I don't know. You're just wasting your own time, your own precious time. Time is money, as they say. So just get comfortable with firing, figuring out what worked and what didn't work, and then you can aim afterwards and refire, and you'll hit the target. Even stepping out of our business lives into our personal lives, I can guarantee there is something that you have always wanted to do or always wanted to try or create or take up the hobby of or whatever it may be that you've done lots of planning for. You've maybe bought all the things needed for it. I live with somebody who loves to do this. We have all the things for wood whittling, or there's a ukulele sitting on my table right now that I'm about to post on Facebook Marketplace because there's all the intention and maybe investing some money in the thing to get the products or the tools and reading all the blog posts and watching the videos. But at the end of the day, if you're not firing and you're spending all of your time aiming, that thing can get away from you. Or if you don't ever fire, you're just wasting your own time under the guise of taking on a new project or learning something new. But if you're not ever doing, then you're just watching TV or you're just reading or whatever it is that you're doing to try and learn about that thing. So ready, fire, aim, and get rid of the ready, aim, fire, unless you're actually talking about a gun. Should put that caveat in there. because that's the way that you're going to learn. You're going to make mistakes. You might not hit the bullseye from the get-go, but you're going to have an idea of how far away from the bullseye that you are. You're going to get feedback from other people on how you could improve or what they would love to see or how you can best help them or serve them. Or you're just going to get a lot of positive reinforcement of people saying, wow, that's awesome. And they're not going to notice how imperfect the thing was that you were so nervous about or so didn't want to put out there into the world. So ready, fire, aim, my friends, and then you can fine tune from there. All right, that's it for now. I appreciate your time, and I'll catch you guys next week.